Hi guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel, and this series that we're starting today is a series on kayak fishing legends. And on my left here, your right, we have one of the stalwarts from many moons ago, Mr. Brad Arthur. Welcome, Brad.
Well, thanks for having me, Brad.
Pleasure, man. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know you, where are you from originally?
Originally,
Yes.
born and bred in the Eastern Transvaal. I'm Mpumalanga.
But that's like, sorry, poos far from the sea though.
That's it's not actually that far, but then Mozambique was closed and you couldn't go there.
Yeah.
Nowadays, Nelspruit to Maputo is sort of at 200 k's, and you get there quickly. And a lot of the guys fish through there. But in my day, the closest would be KZN North Coast, really.
Yeah. But is there any truth in the rumor that when you were at school, that you might have been a fisherman, one of those, what do they call them? Carpengelers.
I was not a carp angler. I was a bass fisherman. It's a very big difference. Like a bottom fisherman versus a game fisherman on a kayak.
Yeah.
If you catch dargers, that's like carp fishing.
And you used to sneak into Kruger and go and fish for bass.
No, there's tigers there.
Lions.
Tigers.
Crocodiles.
Yeah, we used to catch tigers there too. Yeah, a lot has changed nowadays compared to what we used to be able to do then. A lot in those days.
This is the 80s, eh? Where you were doing stuff.
90s.
Okay, sorry, 90s. Okay.
In the 80s when you were at school still. But I was at school in the 90s.
Okay.
There were some big farms there that used to border on Kruger, and that's how you'd get access to those Kruger Park things. But nowadays, that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
So you'd never be able to access those waters. But yeah, I grew up catching bass mostly. Every now and then we'd go and catch a trout in some of the mountain resorts. But I really only started fishing coastal waters once I'd left school.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you telling me that when you left school, your dream at the time was to go and work in a fishing shop in Devon. Not Devon, necessarily Devon, but on the coast, because you love fishing as much as you did. Not necessarily, not the dream job, but to start fishing, and by doing that, it was a platform for you.
Yeah, definitely to be involved in the industry was what I was drawn to. I spent a little bit of time in Cape Town. Cape Town, it's got some fishes, but it has a 7-month off season, which is far too much. Especially as a lighty, Durban, we get to fish year round. So I ended up here in my early 20s, working at Basil Manning in Brickhill Road, I think. No, Point Road.
I remember the original Basil Manning was on the end of Point Road.
Yeah.
On the way to the ski boat club, you could stop there, and they were selling bait and stuff. And then they moved it to where the F&B bankers up on the driveway.
I was working.
They worked with the brothers, Steve and Kevin.
The Humphreys.
The Humphreys, yes. So yeah, we've got good memories.
That's going back a little while.
Yeah. And then, I mean, what drew you to kayak fishing, I suppose? I mean, that's what we hear about, eh?
So, yeah, for sure. Being a lure fisherman, like a bass angler, I used to try and catch fish from the shore. And realistically, the kayak fishing thing was a way to get out to where the fish actually are.
Yeah.
Because fishing along Durban coastline, you're kind of very limited with tidal, and there aren't a lot of fish on the inshore anymore. And access to that with a kayak just put you in waters that were very seldom fished. It was too far for shore anglers to reach. It was also, a lot of the ski boat anglers wouldn't fish that inshore either. They would use their motors and go elsewhere. So you had this very pristine area right behind the back line to sort of a kilometer out to sea.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people won't remember this, but it was in the early 90s. I don't remember the exact sort of timing and the date, but originally we used to drive on the beach, park your car, rock and surf fish, and then they clamped down on basically no beach driving at all. And that was the first sort of interest when a lot more people started to look at kayaks, because those people had fished all over up in various spots. Now they were all of a sudden told you can't, you have to walk. And of course kayaks, the guys could paddle, the 2Ks or whatever.
Yeah, I think also safety became an issue when you couldn't drive on the beach.
Yes.
And if you were sort of alienated on a beach all by yourself, you're just asking for trouble. So there was quite a big boom in the kayak fraternity. And I think because there were so many fish, I mean, we used to even go to Veggies. You could launch Durban Ski Boat Club and catch small coolers and snook on Veggies reef, which is literally like launching in a swimming pool. Like there's not even a wave there.
Which is like most people are used to, I suppose.
Yeah, and the thing is, well, the downside of that is once we started fishing those areas, it was amazing to see how quickly you could decimate what was there.
Yeah.
Even though there weren't a lot of anglers, and look, conservation wasn't a big thing in those days. That came later.
Yeah.
So you basically wiped out those reefs so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just kayak fishing, it was everybody. It's just, everyone was fishing there. The guys were fishing on, you had the traditional crocker skis, you had the ski boats, inshore ski boat fishermen. Yeah, I think so. So, those folks were all fishing one tiny little spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so then you like I said, you started kayak fishing?
Yeah, and I mean, originally there were a few of us who started all at the same time.
The stalwarts.
And we used to go to Mgani River and catch snook.
Yeah.
And you'd hear rumours of guys who would like drive a bit further all the way to Mshloti to launch in the big waves and fish sort of 500 metres out to sea other side.
There were diehard kayak fishermen in Mshloti already. I'd say people like the Clive Hockley generation.
Yeah, for sure. No, they definitely had. They wouldn't mix though.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Even down the south coast, there was.
It's like a surfer, and
Trevor,
it's your beach.
McAlpine type of thing. Just rumours around those.
Don't launch Scott Brook because Trevor's going to knock you out.
Yeah. You couldn't talk to him or anything like that. And he's actually a hell of a nice guy. I don't know where all the rumours came from.
But
there were a few of the places had these sort of stalwart guys who had just kept a very low profile, and they'd been fishing kayaks or rescue crafts for a good few years before that real kayak fishing boom came about in the early 2000s.
Yeah. And I mean, so how many years would that make you up until now that you've fished in a kayak for?
I reckon about 23.
I mean 24 now. You were fishing in the 90s, late 90s, sure.
Yeah, but not in kayaks.
Not in kayaks.
No.
So it would have been early 2000s.
I moved to Durban in 2001 and pretty much started kayak fishing straight away.
Yeah, well, we just saw a photo of a snook that you caught in 2001 that most people would be proud to catch today anywhere on the coast, and that was Blue Lagoon.
Yeah.
Not the Blue Lagoon ones that they catch now.
No, that thing was like 6 or 7 kilos.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the number of years, and I suppose, well, we've talked about why it was kayak fishing for you. For you, it was accessibility. But I think one of the most underestimated things when it comes to a kayak fisherman is if a guy comes from a background like in your case, where it does. You don't just rock up to a bank and throw and you're going to catch a big bomber bass unless you're very lucky. You got to hone your fishing skills a bit. And I suppose most of the people that has sort of were really good. I've seen it over the years as well. A good rock and surf fisherman takes to a kayak very quickly because he knows how to bait presentation, blah blah blah. But so I think that side of it. Once you went onto a kayak, I mean, we've been through the photos there. There was many good fish caught.
Yeah, I think lure anglers especially, they're quite aware of their situations and that sort of things and trying to work out patterns and stuff. So when you take a good bass angler and you put him on a kayak and access to a whole lot of different species, if the thought processes are there, you can work things out quite quickly. And I think I was fortunate to have come from a background like that. And being in the environment where I worked also gave me access to some very good fishing minds.
Yeah.
Both Durban as well as other places I'd been. And that helped that learning curve was very steep.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're implementing things that the fish haven't even seen. A lot of those inshore fish never come across stuff like that before.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was the golden era, I would say.
Oh, there were new lures coming out all the time. There were new things. I mean, you'd catch a snook on a Clark spoon. That's all we would catch him in the beginning. And then things came out. I remember the under craze and all those different crazes of different things and different presentations and we did that over the years. But I mean, so we go onto you fishing on a kayak and you say you fish the barge. I mean, I remember I didn't, but you would go to the barge a lot and fish the barge. Target tuna. You knew the certain times of the year that you'd go and target the tuna. Now we haven't caught a tuna. I mean, for I don't even know how long. But
so I mean, in the beginning, there were really only 3 types of fish you'd catch. You'd catch snook at a certain time of year, or snook early on, and then go and fish for kudu. But kudu was our main target species by far.
Yeah.
And the tuna
bycatch
was bycatch. You know, in the
you
beginning,
tried to catch
you used
him.
to see them jumping, but if you were pulling dead baits, you'd hardly ever catch one. And I think
but nobody ate them anyway.
Yeah, no one ate.
So what would you do if you caught a tuna?
Yeah, just
even if it was for yourself.
And he just fought hard. He pulled you all over the place.
And like I said, even we didn't eat them ourselves.
Sharks ate them.
And sharks ate them. Maybe except for that one time at the barge when you and Carl Schlum were fishing there. Tell us about that.
Carl and I used to fish a lot at the barge, but
there's a little bit of competition though between you and Carl.
Yeah, commercial Carl. Look, he's
commercial Carl. That's a good one. So tell us about this day, because this day sticks in my mind. I remember standing in the car
park. Carl and I we used to work together as well, so that helped with the competition thing.
Yeah.
And the day you're referring to, it wasn't particularly wild out there, and I managed to catch 4 tunas. Yeah. One was 2 of them came from a double up, and actually in dolphins, which we hadn't figured out yet. The dolphins sort of came past and then 2 sticks away.
Yeah.
And if you weren't right there when it happened, so Carl was slightly off the mark and didn't catch one. And then I caught a 3rd one, and then he was getting a bit upset because 3-0 is a big problem. And then I caught a 4th one, and he had to paddle one in.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When you hit the beach.
I hit the beach, and Carl was already washed up, packed up, gone. There was just a tuna at the wash bay, just lying there.
So there is truth in the rumor that Carl once had to paddle your fish because he blobbed.
Yes.
There's blobbed, eh? Carl blobbed, Brad fall. Happens.
Yeah, and I'll even. It happens both ways.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I'll
take it. You got to take it because it happens all the time.
Yeah, there was a day once in Mozambique when I was paddling with you, and
here we go.
You had run out of bait and were starting to come up with.
Was that before or after our straight stick to sailfish?
That was after, including a sailfish which you didn't want to catch and just straight sticked and passed it off. And I don't know how many baits we had, but you probably had like 8 or 9. We
only fish with dead baits, so we would take 10 to 15 baits a day.
You had run out before I had a bite, and you came asking for one, and there was no ways you were getting a bait until I'd caught one.
Yeah.
Once I'd caught one, I would share.
Yeah.
And it still took me like half an hour to catch one, and you had already run out of bait. Yeah. So it
happens.
It definitely happens.
No, it does.
But you remember the days when you outfish your mate properly.
Yeah, definitely.
I also had one with Brett Bartho where he had to paddle a 20 kilo kudu in for me because my hatch was full and he had like one of about 5 kilos or so.
Brett
Bartho. You know that.
No, he's not that competitive on the water though.
No, he's not. He's not a competitive person at all. Coming from like professional sport, his whole family. He's very, very happy to just let other people catch more than him.
You remind me of a story the one day when Marcus came to me and he said, Jelly, you need to go to the ghost house. The snook are there. They're wild. You know, just take yourself a twisty, Halco twisty. Don't worry about anything else. And that's all they're eating. So I phoned Brett. Come, we're going. So anyway, we get there. On the way down, you must pull a lure. I mean, come on, it's, it's a little kilometre and a half down there. So I get one snook, then I get another snook. Then I get to a ghost house and get a 3rd one. Then I'm on to my 4th one. And then Brett eventually arrives, like a little bit behind me. I was like, what happened? He says, no, you lost one. So how many you got? He goes, none. Then I caught the 5th one. Then the Rapala lip came out now, because now I was on 5 and he had 0. Yo, bro, he was very upset. He came back. He caught his 6 or 7 or whatever it was that day eventually, but he wasn't impressed then until he caught his 1st one.
No, but so that's also something. The good anglers will find once they figure out the pattern, then they quickly catch up.
Yeah,
which makes those days good though, because when you do get ahead of them by so far, especially if they don't manage to come right, like that's.
I mean, we can joke about it, but I suppose that's one of the things that people don't realize when it comes to kayak fishing is the banter you haven't. Like, okay, there's 4 of us in a boat. We almost seem to be fishing together.
Yeah.
Okay. So when a rod goes away, we caught it on the boat. When you're fishing with 2 or 3 of your mates on the water on a kayak, and he gets 3 bites and you don't, which could have been the same 3 bites on the boat. That's what I'm saying. That's kayak fishing banter is one of the things I suppose I really enjoy about the sport. Is it's coming from a competitive background. It's fun, and when you catch a fish on the kayak,
you're 100% responsible for everything
Yes.
that happens on that kayak. So whether it's good or bad, it's your fault.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
there's no one else to blame, really.
yeah, and I mean the accomplishment of catching a good fish on a kayak versus catching on a boat, to me feels different. I feel when I've caught something on a kayak, I feel way more accomplished than.
For sure.
You
I
know?
think also the fact that you're so close to the action, like you basically sitting on the water,
Yeah.
and everything is so much more intense than it is on the boat. And I think that's one of the things I love about kayak fishing is the fact that you are right in the environment. You feel like you're really in the water almost.
Yeah, you are. I mean, I suppose that one Pandan trip that we had when the bait balls would come up every morning at the turn of the tide. We were there for a week and it was like clockwork every single day. You'd see it would go from dead quiet. But we'd be like in the middle of the bait balls catching all different species.
And bait sort of hiding under your
Yeah,
kayak because it's got nowhere else to go.
Because it's got nowhere to go. Yeah, so I mean, those are the kind of things that you get on a boat, not so much, but on a kayak you do.
For sure.
Because we're quiet. We're sitting there and they come to us. Yeah. So, what's your biggest fish, or that you remember the most from a kayak?
There's been a few big ones. I think probably one of the most memorable was a big cuda that I caught at Seabell. Back when we used to Seabell, I don't even know if you can go to Seabell anymore and
You can
still
just
stay
don't park
alive.
your car there. You just get dropped off there.
Yeah, shallow reefs that we used to fish, like sort of 15 to 18 meters, and myself and one of the other old stalwarts, Mark Richardson, we were paddling on one mark, and same sort of thing, like bait ball came up and a huge fish boiled in amongst it. And for me, it looked like it was a sailfish, and Mark shouted it was a tuna because obviously he had seen a different angle and just seen like this big round thing, and I'd just seen something big and long.
Yeah.
So we both raced for it. Mark's slower.
It is youth.
So he's also a bit older, so you got to take it. And I managed to get there first, and the mackerel went away, and I was sort of waiting because now I thought it was a sailfish, waiting for it to jump, and it screamed off on the top, like a good 200 meters of line. Fight. Mark's like, you're not going to see this thing for an hour. It's a big tuna.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's going to jump. It's a sailfish swimming around the top. And a few minutes later, this cuda showed up under the ski. Like I'd caught a couple in the
20s.
early 20s.
I mean, your first fish on a cuda was, first fish on a kayak was 20.
First fish on a stealth.
23
kilos.
So,
that was my introduction to stealth. Like, welcome to the stealth tribe.
Yeah.
And this particular fish came up next to me. We had little gaffs then with like little 1-0 hook, gaffed it. And I remember first of all starting to lift it, and I was like, this is going to be a bit of a mission. Mark came over, lifted it up. In those days, your hatch design was actually terrible. It wasn't built for 30 kilo kudas. So we got half of it in.
It was the first one, so it had a very narrow hatch.
Yes. It used to have the sponge on the bottom.
No, we used to have. I thought we had this little hatch we could hide our rods and put the snook that we were catching at the river mouth and the odd cuda and stuff. So
it wasn't. It definitely wasn't made for.
No, not for.
But anyway, we got that fish and a bit of pushing and shoving, and eventually it went in.
Yeah.
Got to the beach. I think it took an hour to get
it out.
I was going to cut your ski in half to take that fish out, but that weighed just over 32.
Yeah.
That was,
and it was fat.
And in those days, also like 20 kilos was actually a very rare fish. Like you didn't catch a lot of them, and not a lot.
Well, there were so many shellfish around, you'd get the shellfish.
Yeah, but also where we fished. So remember, in those days, it was Westbrook and Umshloti, like those were the two, and even nowadays, Westbrook and Umshloti they're not the big cuda areas. You know, if
you don't go to Westbrook to catch.
If a kayak fisherman came to me and said, "Listen, I want to get a cuda over 20," you tell him, "Listen, you go to Zinkwazi, you go there, the back half of April, the first half of May, and then you go South Coast, Scottborough, that sort of area in June, Clanstall, that sort of thing, and you pull wallers." And that's it. If you do 10 outings there in that period, you will hook one that's 20 kilos. Whether you catch him or not is another story. But you'll hook one.
Yeah.
Whereas it will take you a whole season of fishing mshloty to hook one of those.
Yeah.
And those over 25s, they were even more rare. So to get one in the 30s, that was like the holy grail. And I think there's not a lot of kayak fishermen who have caught those 30s.
Well, there's a lot of guys now that have got to 30, but even 32 is an extra 2 kilos. I suppose.
Definitely not a 40 though. But yeah, so that I would say is probably one of the most memorable, just because not a lot of people had that. Like it was one, I don't think there had been 5 yet of 30 kilos. Like it was one right in the beginning. And that kind of just sets a standard. And it was the fish that we used to fish for. So everyone used to fish for kudu all the time. It wasn't like nowadays where there's a whole host of different things to fish for.
Yeah.
You fish for kudu, and if you could catch the big ones, well, that just elevated you in amongst your peers.
Definitely. And your favorite fish to target on a kayak?
That's changed a bit. So I started off, I used to catch lots of snook, and actually
you were the snook whisperer.
Yeah, once you figure them out and you work out how they hunt on the tides and that sort of thing, they're a fun fish to catch. Yeah. And once braid came along, it changed everything for us. Because
okay, let me interrupt you quickly. I sort of remember like the original snook trace was the original snook trace. Okay, whatever it was, and you came up, puzzled the old idea where you actually had fluoro short bite trace, and you made it was your custom snook trace.
Yeah, so
like I say, you'd worked it out and it worked for you. I mean, you would catch snook flipping all day long.
Yeah, now it's become a standard thing. You don't need lots of wire for a snook. He's never going to swallow your trace.
No, but I mean by changing to that, your catch rate is
for sure.
Through the
so
roof.
As soon as we just kept the wire where he's going to bite, and you went fluorocarbon after that, but that sort of comes from being in that fishing tackle environment, because you get to talk to a whole lot of people and they're like, oh, we do this on rock and surf, and if you fish, you can still catch cob and have a piece of wire within your bait so that if a shad comes or a shark comes, it doesn't bite you off. That's kind of where it had come from. And I thought, well, geez, if they're willing to do that, because grey sharks used to be for those competition anglers, that was their bread and butter type of thing. And they'd often fish, if you fished with full wire, you couldn't catch them, or you couldn't catch anything else. Like literally, that was the only thing you'd catch. Whereas if you changed your trace up a little bit, you could suddenly bring some of the edibles or even the skates into play. And I kind of just modeled that idea to bring it into the snook trace. And it's a similar thing with lures now, even pulling Rapalas or Halcos on your kayak. You can pull them without wire, and you literally...
to be honest, I don't think I've put wire on a Halco or a Rapala in about 3 years.
Yeah, but
whereas when we started,
you had everyone. It was just you had to put it on,
and you would have a long wire, freaking big swivel.
Yeah, and then you took it off, and the bite rate would go up.
You'd lose a couple,
but very few.
Yeah.
So once you'd kind of worked that out, then and I mean the kayak fishing fraternity, when the guys who were very active in it, we taught each other a lot of stuff, and I think that camaraderie helped the whole industry for us, because as guys would pick things up, you would share it amongst you didn't kind of keep all the secrets to yourself, and I think that sharing is what made a huge difference, especially once we started to spread our wings a little bit and went into Mozambique, braid, drop shots, all of that. I think it changed a lot of even the ski boat angling.
Okay, you say that
evolved significantly.
There's probably not many people out there now that'll know the story of how we started drop shotting on a kayak. And I mean, we went to the Gunjata jet ski fishing ski comp, and you had a plastic bucket, but I don't even know, like this little bucket over there, like a plastic bucket, and I actually used to steal ideas with their eyes, like you do at a competition. And you and I to take the piss out of it, we put a bucket on the table with bass worms in it. Do you remember now?
I do remember that.
And it was Rory Nicholson and Brian Taylor and a few oaks, and they were asses they were giving us. Oh, you think you're clever. Excuse me for swearing, sorry. You think you're clever, like, but joking with us. Bass worms on the table, you're not going to fool us. And we were like, yeah, that was fine. But the 3 days prior to that, we had the old BG, mono, no braid, nothing, eh? No leaders, nothing.
The rods are also terrible.
Okay.
Oh.
We had, yeah, they were terrible, and we had a little fish head drop shot that Rapala was giving. They couldn't get rid of it because no one bought them. Came from Australia. It was called a squidgy. That was it. And these bodies, and we went and we first started throwing that. We threw it at Island Rock at the Rock, and I think as yours landed, you hooked that. I think it was a snapper or something.
Stump nose.
A stumpy, but
like a 5 kilo
bomber.
stumpy.
And we were like, oh, this is gonna work. And then we went to Pandan that afternoon, and we absolutely collided with the fish.
Yeah, no.
And then the comp obviously started 2 days later, and everyone thought we were joking. But we were joking with the worms, but we had our secret stash in our box, like 2 scalloms. And then we went out to Pandan that afternoon, and remember there were no fish finders back then, eh?
No.
We were fishing by the eye, line up the palm tree with like we told McLaughlin, line up the palm tree with the house with the blue roof and the 2 coconuts. But we knew it, and obviously that time of the year, it was November, and the kingies used to shoal, and we could see them by eye. You could see them,
yeah.
And we would throw the drop shot, and it would go tight. And the Oaks were throwing every baits, onders, whatever there was at the time, and no one would get a bite. And we were just going, and I think you won that comp with about 1,200 points. And I think like I had 1,150, and then the third place was like 300 points, or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was definitely.
It was
a two-horse race.
We had like I think 11 or 12 species from drop shotting, and no one else did it. And I think then the Barthos asked you about it, and you jumped in the boat. You went to the Ganjata jet ski, the Ganjata ski boat comp, and then you guys absolutely collided with the fish on the ski boat.
So
comp.
that was really
once again.
the start.
It was.
Of that, I mean, those fish had never seen anything like that before. It was
we came back from that trip,
wrong.
We came back from that trip, and our good friend, old Mr. Westerhoff, Mr. Chris Westerhoff. Do you remember
Yeah.
What did we call him? What was his?
Captain Chaos.
Captain Chaos. And you and I were sitting out Westbrook on Stud Rock, and you were joking about the drop shotting, and he was like, "There's no way anything eats a drop shot." And I even said to him, I said, "Okay, I'm going to throw this drop shot now. Whatever I catch, you're going to eat raw." And he said, "No problem, whatsoever." I said, first throw, went down, on Stud Rock, like 2 twitches, came back with a nice sized bottom, and he paddled away, never to be seen again, because he had to eat it raw. So yeah, no one knew about drop shot fishing then. Obviously it was around the world, in the States and Australia, and
yeah, I think often in South Africa we had.
There was no social media. There was very little
catch up.
There was no social media, very little internet back then.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you could just go on the internet and research. It was like someone would give you something, and you were like, it's not going to work. And either you found a way that someone else was using it. So people over the world, overseas, were using it. We didn't invent it. You just took something that was super popular that no one really knew about, and it worked. It really worked.
Yeah, we were limited by whatever the distributors in South Africa would bring. We were very willing to be guinea pigs. Like you were fishing, taking a paddle-powered craft where people think you shouldn't go. Yeah. Like if you went 100 meters past the nets, the guy's like, "Oh, what are you going to do? Like, what happens if something goes wrong here? You can't swim all the way back."
Yeah.
You didn't feel like you were in danger at all.
No.
And nowadays, obviously with the kayaks you've created now, paddling even 3 or 4 kilometers out, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And you've always been there to sort of push the boundaries. And when that drop shot came about, and we were willing to try basically anything.
Yeah.
And when you've got the level of anglers that we had, all willing to try and quickly work out the patterns.
And once again, we would share.
Got so far ahead.
We would share our information, and then we would work out what worked.
Yeah.
We did that a lot in Mozambique. We used to, you would fish with a red lure, pink one, and I'd fish with a yellow one and a green one, and then we would talk about how many bites we got, and then the next day we would swap and try, and then by the time the competition started, you and I would know that
run out of lures.
Yeah, those were we did a few times, but those were the colors that were working. So you, like you say, share the information, step ahead already. And I think, so if you've drop shotted, you've pulled lures, you've fished with live bait. If I gave you a choice now to go fishing for 2 hours, what would you want to do? What would you find the most interesting?
I still find that light jigging to be the most fun. So you're asking about what's your favorite fish to catch. I still enjoy catching the kingies, whether you catch them on drop shot or squid jigs or that. So like that to me is the most fun thing to do. But you do that for a while, and then you put a bait and hear a kuda run when it's eaten your bonnie or something like that. And
that's nice.
Yeah, that's or tuna eating a live mozzie off the top or something like that. So there's nothing that I'd say, oh, I'd only do this. Yeah. I think the joy with a kayak is you get to fish for so many different things from the comfort of like your one little chair. Sitting.
And
I think also one of the things that we learned kayak fishing is you couldn't just change your plan, as in destination, once you'd launched and you'd gone out. That was it. You're stuck there. Okay. So you had
like
to
you launch Pandan, for example. You can't move.
You can't move.
You got to make it work.
So you got to make it work.
Yeah.
So you pull dead bait, you don't get a bite. You got to change it up, and I think that's where we learnt a lot as anglers. You got forced to figure things out.
You got to make the area work.
And I think that's something that new people to the sport need to understand. Like, you make the call, and if you go to an Umshloti or a Westbrook or whatever it is, there's always something there to catch. Like, it's very seldom that there's absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out what they're eating or what the species is that you've got to fish for.
Yeah.
You can go there and you can pull kuda baits and the water's slightly greenish, and if you just went inshore a little bit, the snook would be wild.
Yeah.
Or you'd catch yellow spots on the pet shop or whatever it is.
Yeah,
but you need to be adjustable in your tactics, and you're there for the time. And also what we found, especially places with big currents like Pandans and those type of things, is they change as the tides change. So you might start off and there's not much happening, and 2 hours later, changing conditions, changing tide, changing wind or current, and it's a whole different ball game. Like,
we worked that out. We worked that out because we used to fish Pandan so often, and we used to say.
And then it just goes dead.
Yeah. Okay, so I suppose we've touched on that all the different kinds of fishing and everything, but your favorite place to fish on a kayak?
I think because of the memories it holds, that Pandan area has always been a favorite of mine. I've had a lot of success there, and also just the beauty of the place. It's a very special destination. So yeah, I would think that's got to be right up there. You can catch just about anything there. We've caught literally every kayak species that you can catch along our coastline. We've caught there before.
Marlin, sailfish, wahoo, everything.
The whole thing. So yeah, I would say that's definitely my favorite kayak fishing destination. And like in the beginning, it used to be really tough to fish there.
Yeah.
With the smaller kayaks, it's sort of 4 meters. When the current came, it was really
difficult. You need the current there to fish that place. If that place doesn't have current, it doesn't work.
Nowadays, I mean, when we fished the most recent one, fishing on the new craft, then you guys are cheating. Like,
you guys are cheating.
They don't understand what it took to fish there and be able to spend time there. To spend time nowadays is actually really easy on the skis that we have. So I think that makes it even more enjoyable. Like, as we get older, you don't want to have to paddle that same intensity the whole time. And you've now made it possible that we don't have to be an Olympic paddler to fish Pandan, which is sort of felt
wonderful.
Like that. Yes.
Felt like that back in the day, though.
For sure.
Yeah. And then if you had a dream place to go and kayak fish, like, you've traveled a lot, you've been all over the world. Like, if you could take a kayak somewhere, where do you think that would be?
That's a tough question, because like some of the really good fishing places that I've fished, I wouldn't actually like to be there in a kayak. Like, they have raging currents and stuff like that. And while the fish are big, it's not accessible. It would actually be impossible. I'd still like to catch a big yellowfin off the Cape on whether that I'm not paddling out there. Like, we'll just put it on a boat.
Way to paddle
and go out. But I think for me, I would like to do somewhere like Tropic Star Lodge or one of those places. Catch rooster fish.
Yeah.
The inshore fishing there is really good. Not a hang of a lot of current, so it'll be quite easy fishing, I would think.
Yeah.
And a lot of species that you can challenge. And also deep water and shallow water quite close to one another. So that's what we're looking for as kayak anglers. You want that diversity without having to travel kilometers.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you can have a place where you've got good inshore fishery and it's only a kilometer and you can have proper drop-offs and that sort of thing and catch
Isn't that why
blue water
successful?
pelagics.
Isn't that why we love Mozambique?
Yeah,
so
100%.
much?
And
Yeah.
that, I mean, Pandan is exactly the same thing. You go from 10 meters of water on the point to 50 meters of water. You can literally throw that far with a spoon. Like it's crazy.
Brett Bartho first caught an amberjack at Pandan, and it was 78 meters of water, 80 meters of water. I went out there with him.
It wasn't even that far.
Yeah, it was. I think we paddled 1.4 or 1.5 kilometers from where the other guys were kayak fishing, and they couldn't see us because they didn't know we were there. And we came in, and I couldn't believe, like, where'd you catch them? You know, everyone trying to work out where you caught them, but it's accessible because it was 30 meters where they were fishing and 78 where we were, 1.5 kilometers away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
And I mean, when you get to that sort of depth of water, basically everything's accessible. Like marlin, tunas, sailfish, whatever.
Yeah.
Everything is coming there.
Skipjack tuna. So, if you also, like, now to just touching on a few things, but your most useful piece of tackle on a kayak, like if you allowed one rod and reel.
So, one of the things I think changed our ski boat fishing and kayak fishing at the same time was the introduction of braid and spinning reels.
Yeah.
Like, we had never really used those in the beginning, which meant you'd never catch a tuna because you couldn't throw at one.
Yeah.
And you'd have to pull a lure at him.
And if you
With
wasn't
a
eating
kayak
the
that's only 4 meters long, so your speed is just...
if you never got it exactly in the right spot,
Yeah.
you wouldn't see it.
Once braid came along, and I think the biggest change to our kayak fishing was Shimano's Trevella rods. Like, I think that changed everything, because you could have a rod that you could throw a tiny 20-gram spoon to catch live bait bonnies.
Yeah.
But if a 25-kilo tuna ate that same spoon, you could still catch him.
Yeah, yeah.
And that changed everything, because you could have one rod that you could target,
and you could drop
small
shot on
fish,
that rod,
and you could drop shot with it. So, you know, we never used to have 5 rod holders and that sort of stuff on your kayaks. So I think that changed everything, because you could now throw lures, drop shot, you could trawl baits if you really wanted to trawl lures. It just made...
So basically you're saying a good quality spinning reel, rod and reel combo on a kayak can answer most of your questions.
For sure. You're going to use it with...
I mean, you can still troll with it if you want to.
Even.
You can troll with it if you really wanted to.
So I think that made the biggest difference to us.
Yeah.
If I had to take one lure, I don't know. On my spinning rod, I actually pulled a few of those onders out the other day, and just, I think versatility and the amount of different things you could catch on that.
The one the fish
It would make it very hard to leave that behind.
Yeah.
I also had a look at some of the lures that we used to pull, and that Laser Pro R15 120.
Still bomb.
And there used to be a Sorcerer 125 that I haven't seen in shops. I don't even know if they still make it, but we used to catch a lot of fish on them.
Yeah.
So those two things, I mean, guys pull completely different stuff nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
But like we saw in some of the competitions, when you pull that retro thing out, the fish don't know the difference. He's still very happy to eat that.
Yeah.
Like, for them, it's new again.
Yeah.
Like, they haven't seen those for a long time.
Yeah.
And those type of lures are timeless, really. Like, I mean, you're always going to catch fish. And all over the world, too. Like, I've taken those onders all over the place.
Still work.
They still work. Anywhere that there's
surface action,
eating small bait fish, game on.
Good job. I suppose one last question before we get onto a few other things is, what advice would you give to someone starting out on kayak fishing?
Be patient. Like, you're not going to know it all in one go. There's so many different fish to target that you have to kind of learn how those different species work before you're going to be successful. And I mean, that kind of makes a massive difference when we fish species competitions, because some of the guys who've done it for a long time have huge advantages over a newbie who's starting, because you understand the feeding habits of all those fish.
Yeah.
And don't leave fish to find fish. Kind of, if you've committed to a spot, don't think it's so much better
to go somewhere else
and paddle like an hour and a half to get there.
Yeah.
Nowadays that guys have cell phones and stuff, it makes it a bit easier. You can actually phone your mate who's fishing a kilometre away and find out what's happening there. But when we first started, you kind of had to make a call to go there. And most of the times it didn't work out for you.
Yeah.
Like if you're just stuck where you were and learn the areas, then...
And how to fish the area.
You become a lot more successful in that. So you kind of have to pick 2 or 3 spots and learn them well. And then you'll find... You'll pick up the patterns and stuff. And then when you start to put that into different areas, you'll see it's much simpler to be successful at a whole lot of different...
Yeah, it's not. We don't overcomplicate it, and I think what you said is very true. Guys don't spend the time to learn the area, the fish that have been caught in the area, the ways to catch those fish as well. But how does that area work on a northwest, a northeast, or a southwest, or a green water, or an inshore current?
And you'll also see the fish, like especially kudas and those type of things, they get caught in the same area.
Yeah.
You might go there when there's a lot of them and you catch one in a spot that's actually not supposed to be there. But if you go and fish that same place over and over again, it's probably the only fish of the season that got caught there.
Yeah.
So you need to understand where the real hot spots are that make that spot known for those fish.
I mean, like I say, we can talk about lots of advice to beginners and all the rest of it. And then I think something that just came to my mind now was we'll talk about the last Pandan comp, okay, when you won the comp. And from the outside, or even from the inside, the guys that came were like a little bit flabbergasted, like, my God, like Brad's just cleaning our pipes here. And the biggest mistake that most people made at that Pandan comp, and I can tell you what it is now, is everyone was moving around way too much.
Yeah, so
everyone was going as far as they could, and they were moving. And you and I mean, I fished one afternoon there because obviously doing other stuff with the comp every day, but all you did was you understood Pandan, how it works. You went there and you spent the time, and you caught the fish around everybody else. And those people didn't get a bite, and they would leave. Exactly what we were talking about. They didn't work out what was going in that area. And I mean, 90% of the fish that you caught in that comp were caught in Pandan.
Yeah, so I don't think staying at Pandan was 100% choice. It was kind of forced on me. With my fitness levels, I didn't have the option of racing 3 or 4 kilometers to
but
get
it goes back to what you're saying.
So you've got to make it work for where you are.
That's what goes back to what you're saying.
And if you're going to pick a place to fish, pick a place that's got all the options.
Yeah.
Like that was, and there were 1 or 2 days I did have to branch out a little bit to it, but there were very few fish I was actually looking for there, and that makes it a lot easier. Like I built up the base at Pandan, which makes it different. It had weight, there were a number of species there, and then it's just a case of ticking off the extras.
Yeah.
And you just go to the place where it's the easiest to catch them, really.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I'd say let's go back to 2001, because I remember 2001. We, once again with the pioneers, when I did that trip, we left Durban and headed to Mozambique with a small rubber duck, Greg Kiddo and a camera. It was me. Well, I wasn't the fisherman. I was trying to get the fisherman to catch a fish.
You were not a fisherman at all.
It was you, Mark Richardson, Steve McLaughlin,
Keith Hockley, Joe. Yeah.
And we just traveled and went fishing and caught, some of the most amazing fish on that trip. And we had places where I remember fishing off Barrow Lodge and the kudu were eating floating helcos. Like, it was mayhem.
Yeah,
But I was saying that was a pioneer of the first trip, and then we wrote articles on it and we explored kayak fishing. And that's what I say is, like, over the years, maybe some people don't know you for that because they haven't been around, not around long enough, but haven't been in the sport long enough, that there's so many of the aspects of the sport that you were involved in and pioneering, from going to a destination to...
Yeah, that was great time for all of us. You were you were keen to just grow the sport and see what we could actually do, and put us in environments where there's a lot more fish to catch. And I mean, that was where Pandan kind of started for us. We didn't stay at Pandan that trip.
No, we tried to fish Pandan one day. The current was so bad that we never went back until obviously we met Lee and Andre on a show.
Yeah, so I'd actually gone with your dad up.
No, that was afterwards.
No.
Was it before?
Yeah. So shortly after that exploratory trip that we did, I went up with your dad, my dad came, a couple of other people, and we went to stay at Pandan itself, because like you said, we tried to fish it once or twice and it didn't really work out. And it was late season, sort of July, and there was some proper big cuda there. My dad hadn't caught very many fish on the kayak, and I was like, no, come, I'll show you how it works. That was one of the most memorable days I've ever had. My dad caught a cuda of sort of 23, I think it was 23 kilos. Like amazing, like screamed off, pulled him around all over the place, managed to gaff it. He was only too happy, and he paddled in. I stayed out a bit longer and got one of 30.
Yeah.
And that photo I sent to the owners of Pandan of a 23 and a 30 kilo cuda caught on kayaks right in front of the, and that was where we met them at the boat show, and it was basically you guys have to come back and do a competition. That's where it all started.
Yeah.
Those, like literally that day.
Yeah. And then there were stories, I mean, we can go on for hours and hours and hours, but there was you'll never catch a kingfish over 25 kilos. And Andre offered us, I think, 5,000 Rand. And 5,000 Rand back then was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then you caught that one, I think.
I was like a kilo short.
Yeah, a kilo short. Marcus caught the first one, biggest one, okay, in the comp. But I mean, that one afternoon you caught it, you and I fishing together, and that thing literally swallowed the live bonnie, I think.
Yeah.
And it was what, 20, and they couldn't believe it. There was like, you can't catch these fish on this little floating object with a paddle, and of course we did, so yeah. So I mean, so like I say, there's a lot of years of kayak fishing that people don't realize. Maybe you don't fish so much in it,
No, but I think also, so the fishing side, I think together we made a great team. Like I would bring sort of the fishing expertise and help you up in that space, and you would assist with the kayak design to get it to become the fishing crafts they are today, to be able to fish the way we wanted to.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at how your kayaks evolved from those original Wahoos that you had to what we have available today, that's because you listened to the angler. And you wanted to make something that works.
Yeah, so I was the first one to put a rod chute in the kayak so we could hide our rods inside the hatch, because the Oaks were running their rods when we were launching. Remember, the original kayak, we used to put our rods on top.
Yeah, I did.
And we get drilled in the shore break, and then your reel was the case, so we built the rod chute into the fish hatch so that you could hide your rods in the hatch. And then, the live well, for example, on a fishing kayak, took me 6 months of fiddling around, because I understood the concept of how you paddle a kayak and how it responds. Tried it in like various positions and various ways, and nothing worked for me until I found it where it is now. So I know what you're saying in that sense. And it was. I mean, we still I only like to fish with you when we fish competition, because we just laugh about it. And from donkeys years ago, we both got like a pattern on what we're going to do, and we do it and stick to it, and we generally catch fish.
Yeah.
Well, not this year, but that's because you didn't fish this year.
I didn't fish with you.
Last year and the year before, we caught fish. Now this year you didn't fish with me. I didn't catch anything. But yeah. So
I think also from, like in the beginning, I got a kayak because I wanted to access the fish. Okay. Nowadays, and as we get older and a bit more philosophical about stuff, it's actually not about the fish anymore. Like, we don't go fishing to catch. That's just the nice. It's the camaraderie. It's the outing. It's the seeing the dolphins and the turtles. It's the get a bite here just so that you can chirp your mate about something.
Yeah.
But it's no longer about, let's go and see if we can catch 10 of these things.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's also a bit of a mindset that's changed in the kayak fishing fraternity as well. Like, guys don't go fishing to load hatches.
Yeah, you say that. You say that, and I think it's another thing that people don't know, is that when you helped me with the first Pandan comp, we implemented every single kingfish had to be released.
Yeah,
And everybody said to us, it's impossible, you can't do that. How can you have a competition when you're releasing your fish? And I mean, back then there was no phones, eh?
no.
But to make sure that we got evidence of a person who caught a fish and released it was not easy.
No.
But we had cameramen who would chase around and get photos on a jet ski with a camera, and everyone was releasing the kingfish. And obviously then it evolved.
And I think that also helps that you've got the kayak anglers all close to one another. Because then you can just put your hand up and come here. And you had to take a leap of faith and hope that everyone's going to kind of stick to the rules. But that's what happened. Yeah. We changed, like even in the ski boat competitions, you have that now. So that originally came from you and I not wanting to paddle around 10 fish for the whole day. You'd actually rather let them go, so your kayak's not so heavy.
That's the real truth. We'll stick to that. Okay.
But I think that also goes back to the kayak fishermen were always the guys who want to be the guinea pigs. They'll try things out. So let's test out this release thing. We'll give you slightly more points than you would have if you took it in. And you let a kudu go, it counts as 10 kilos. You know if you took him to the scale.
It was quite hard to get a lead shooter to release a kudu.
And Rob
sailfish weights the time he caught 7 sailfish in 3 days.
Something like that.
Every single one was caught on a, what do you call those little things with a long pointed nose in Mozambique? Little half beak. And he was just catching sailfish after sailfish. But those are the days were good, you know. So yeah, but it's been good catching up, Mr. Arthur.
Oh, thank you, Charlie.
It's been interesting. There has been 1 or 2 questions that I've had thrown my. One of them was, why do we call you the Milkfish?
No, I don't know. I have no idea.
You don't have any idea?
No, I have no idea.
So whatever we hear out there is...
No, and Kiddo is not getting an answer.
Greg Kiddo, he was the one on Facebook. Greg Kiddo said to me...
Yeah, don't believe everything you hear.
Don't believe everything you hear. If it's no evidence, it doesn't count. Oh no. There was another name that Mr. What's his name? Mark has got a nickname for you as well, but I don't want to go down that road.
Not the Prince of Pandan.
No, the Prince of Pandan. Yes, you got Prince of Pandan. So you got a lot of nicknames. Prince of Pandan was because you came second a few times in a row.
Yeah, but I mean that happens.
It happens. Yeah. But that's species fishing. And the thing was, it wasn't the same person who would beat you.
No, and the thing is with those, any competition angling, you'd rather be lucky than good. Like you do need that element of luck to catch that one extra species. Or
is that like the one you? No, actually, I can't go there.
Oh no, we can go there.
The time I was winning the competition and you paddled in.
You were winning the competition. It was done. Day 5, I was paddling. I'd given up. High five, Teddy, well done. And I paddled in, and just on the point, I stopped.
You were inside the bay.
And I was waiting for you. And I don't know what you were trying to do, but you were like up and down still. And I was like, you know what? What am I going to do?
You were in the bay.
Just waiting for this guy. And I threw a little drop shot out. I could see the floor. A couple of twitches on 12 kilo kuda, drop shot, no wire, and you lost
by 10 points.
If you had just paddled with me, it
so
was
you
done.
Had in the bay, shallow water in the bay.
Final rugby, and you've got the ball in possession. You kick it out and you win, and you're like, no, I'm going to try. And you get intercepted and you lose. Like that's basically what you did. You had possession.
It still
all
hurts.
you had to do is just kick it out.
It still hurts.
You didn't kick it out.
I didn't kick it out. I was enjoying.
But did you learn?
Yeah, I didn't learn. I still didn't learn. I still fished too much. Yeah, there we go. That one still hurts, eh? And that was back in the day. 20,000 rand first prize when they were already punting Mozambique.
So to put it into perspective,
200 grand now.
You could buy 5 kayaks for 20 grand.
So, see, I feel ill thinking about it again.
And it's one kuda.
But it's okay. No, but it was one kuda with no wire on a drop shot in 4 meters of water inside the bay in Pandan.
Well, that's where they live.
That's where they live. Oh dear. Okay, that's it. I think that's about it for now. We could carry on for hours and hours and hours. There's too many stories.
For sure.
Too many stories, but it's been good catching up.
Invite me back another day.
I'll invite you back for another day to catch up. I have your kayak in the container here, don't I?
No, you don't. I keep it away from you because every time it sits in the container, you sell it.
Oh, that's true. But this one we haven't sold, and this one we've got a special sticker for your kayak. Okay.
What's the sticker?
It's called the Olympic Flame. Why did we nickname it the Olympic Flame?
You tell me.
Because it never goes out. On that note, it's been good, brother. Good to catch up.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.